What's going on, guys? We got coffee and real estate going on today. Episode 10 now. We got episode 10.
All right.
We didn't start off thinking it was going to happen that way, but we're here now.
I know. It just seems like we started a couple of weeks ago. All right. That's cool. 10 episodes down. All right.
Well, today what we're going to be talking about is what's called probate, or inheriting homes, what that looks like afterward. What you should, what you shouldn't do. So if you're in a situation where you inherited a home and you kind of don't know where to go, stay tuned. By the end of this episode, hopefully you know a little bit more. And if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll try to answer those questions.
Yeah, definitely. So this is going to be a really complex subject because people don't really want to talk about what happens if they inherit a property. They don't want to talk about, if a loved one passes or anything like that. It's a touchy subject. Yeah. So it's a very difficult subject to talk about and you ignore it. But what happens is that eventually these things do happen, unfortunately. And then you have to deal with the situation at the aftermath, right? So, it's a very important topic to talk about. And so definitely, if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment. We'll go back and address that comment, or we'll even address it in the next video as well. So just a little bit about it. I mean, you threw out the word probate.
Yes.
You threw out the word inherited properties. What is probate?
So before we get into that, I think it's important for you guys to know we're not lawyers. we're real estate agents that run into a lot of these situations, and a lot of our clients have to go speak to a lawyer to get the proper legal advice, right? So what we're doing today is we're talking a little bit about what it is, what we've seen in the transactions that we've done, and how those were handled and how those turned out. Not every situation is going to be the same. So again, we're not lawyers. It's not legal advice, but it will be what we've seen out in the field.
Yeah, definitely. So again, we're not giving any legal advice throughout this episode, but what we are going to do is get you connected with the correct individuals and who do you speak with. So when if you comes down to estate planning or planning for something like this, we'll connect you with who you need to speak with. We're just not giving legal advice today, but we're just giving you what we run into with our clients or with, in purchases ourselves, investment purchases, what's going on. So,
yeah. And I think it's important because we've seen an uptick, right? So what's hot right now in real estate? One of the things changing is with the craziness of the last few years, we're seeing so much more when it comes to title companies being really strict about what gets documented and making sure that the person selling the property is the person who's the one allowed to sell the property, right? There's not a loophole to this. This has to get done a certain way. So with the question, what is probate? Probate in layman's terms is the process by which an individual goes through the court system. So it's the court system's process to determine who is the new rightful owner of that property based on the laws of that state. So each state has its own laws, and it's going to be determined based on the laws of that specific state.
Right. And you mentioned owner, but it could be owners.
It could be owners.
It could be owners. And so that's definitely something to worry about. And sometimes, this is kind of a problem what we had is that an individual thinks that, well, I'm the sole owner once, so-and-so passes, I'm the sole owner. Coming to find out, there are other heirs involved in the property. And that's really why probate happens, is that there might be an heir out there that we don't know about for whatever reason. And they have legal ownership after the court decides, and they go through probate, after the court decides who are the legal owners. That's why it's important. And that's why title companies, because at the end of the day, when you go, you must close, or we advise, always close through a title company.
Yep.
Always close through a title company. They're ultimately responsible to make sure that whenever ownership conveys, that there aren't going to be anybody else coming back saying, hey, I had ownership of that. So probate is extremely important to make sure that you go through, find out who the legal owner or owners are. And if you're trying to sell that property, do you have the full say-so in selling that property? If you're buying that property, you want to make sure the title company does their job. And then when they turn in that title to you, it's free and clear, the way they promise it, right? So,
and the reason you go through title is because title makes sure that these things were taken care of. and the title company ensures that you're getting a clean title. If something went wrong in that process and you went through a title company, the majority of the time, they're going to cover whatever it takes to get that situation fixed with the title. Whereas if you don't go through a title company and you just did it on your own and something comes up, it falls on you. The expense of fixing it or having to give up that property
Or pay off that individual.
or pay off that individual falls on you.
Yeah, so that's a tip right there. We told you.
Yep. Sips and tips.
Sips and tip right there. Always close with the title company. I said we weren't going to give legal advice, but we're going to connect you with the right people to do it. So
yes,
title policy, and it's called an owner's title policy. That is an insurance policy that protects you. So that's why we always advise close with the title policy. Title company. So
you want to know something crazy? Is there's so many situations where, especially when you're dealing in the investment world, is you run into a lot of situations and you realize most people don't create a will. So most people, when they go through or they don't go through the probate process, also sometimes there's a will, but they never go through probate, and there's a limitation to how long you have. I believe in Texas it's 2 years that you have to probate. Otherwise, even if you have a will, it's almost doesn't, it loses value because you took so long to probate it. But a lot of times we run into situations where it doesn't go through probate at all. So that probate process then happens as you're trying to close on the property, and that can delay you months, even a year at times, because you're having to get through all the people that might have had claim to that property and having them sign off on it. So I guess another sip and tip, not legal advice, would be if you have a property that you want to hand down to somebody, or you have a property that maybe you're going to get from somebody, and the parent maybe doesn't understand this stuff a little bit, or a lot of it, or any way at all, is to speak to an attorney and create a will.
Right.
And if you don't have the funds to create a will, then at least have that person that's going to pass the property on send an email out to maybe somebody who's going to be in charge of all this, or sign their own. They could put it on a napkin. At least in Texas, they could write it on a napkin on a random piece of paper and have a notary be there when they sign it. That way, at least on paper, there's something saying, when I pass away or if anything happens to me, I want to will this property over to this specific person or these specific people. There's some kind of paper trail there.
Right. You mentioned, definitely talking to an estate planning attorney, so don't go to, there's a lot of great attorneys out that way.
Yeah.
You don't want to go to someone who handles traffic tickets all day long.
Yeah.
So the proper attorney is an estate planning attorney.
Yes.
And by the way, this is extremely important because it does cost money when you go through probate. And if you're a person of, this is the limited means or limited resources, this is maybe one of the only property that's going to be willed to you, that may be, you want to save money on that. That we have resources where you can go get attorneys pro bono. So if you want to know those names, drop a comment below. We'll get to you and we'll get those services out that way. We also know we work with many, many great estate planning attorneys that can get you set up with a will and make sure that is properly executed at the end. And so, because it does cost money. It does cost money. And especially if you're selling the property, you want to sell the property, you don't want to have more added expenses.
Yeah.
Which is most times it's not a fun time for individuals. They recently lost someone, or they have to sell the house because the maintenance becomes too much and all these things. It's not a happy event. So you want to prevent all those things. You want to be prepared. And again, let us know what resources you need, either estate planning attorneys. And again, we have services that provide it on a pro bono basis. So go from there. Yeah.
And I think right now, one of the hot topics is trusts. I can't open a social media app without someone being like, trust. Don't will your inheritance over to your kids. Put it in a living trust. And no one ever explains what the heck a living trust is. And I think there's a lot of confusion out there. And ultimately, what it comes down to from what I've seen is you choose a will or put it in a living trust. Like those are kind of the two options. And there's a battle between people giving advice saying, which one's better?
Right. I'll take you a step further is that, there's those options. There's putting it in a will, putting it in a living trust. And then I've also heard, hey, just have them sign it over to you, which might, and this is not legal advice, but all of those three things have different tax consequences to both the owner and the new owner. They have complete different. And we're not here to tell you which one is the best one.
Yeah.
We're here to tell you, explore all those options and figure out which one is going to be the most efficient and economical. Because everyone, again, I'm going to stress this out, you can't get away from taxes, right?
Yep.
You have to pay taxes. So each one has a different tax consequence applied to it. And so a lot of people say, well, no, have them sign it over to you, maybe 2 years if you know something, or early on, have them add you it to the deed, all these things. Good advice. Is it blanket? But it's blanket advice, and it may not be the best in your situation. So,
yeah. And in our experience, sips and tips here, don't listen to social media. Don't listen to us here on YouTube. Always go to that estate planning attorney. At the end of the day, your situation could be different. Someone who has 10 properties to put in a living trust, it might make more sense for them than for someone who just has their homestead property and they just want to will that over to somebody.
Exactly.
Because of the cost. You got to weigh the costs. And some of them are like short-term, immediate, lower cost, but they cost you more in the long run. Some of them cost you a little bit more up front, but they save your heirs on the back end.
On the back, right.
So it all depends on what your goals are, right? So if you could care less about your heirs and you're like, let them pay the bill, then there might be a different strategy for you. But if you want to build legacy and you want your heirs to be able to like minimize what they have to pay upon inheritance, then there might be another strategy. So you definitely want to speak to a professional when it comes to that.
You definitely want to speak with an estate planning attorney. The other person that you want to probably include in your team is a CPA who will explain to you the tax consequences on each one of the options that you go through. And again, you touched on a point, is the size of the estate really matters. The size of the estate and the debts associated with each estate really matter. You may have a situation where you're going to have to liquidate some portion of it. What does that look like, right?
Yeah.
And you want to be fully prepared so that in the time that it happens, you've already gone through. It's not, again, I say this again, it's a very hard time all around. And you don't want to complicate those things by not having the financial orders. And you can start now. By the way, that's another misconception, is that you have to wait until until you're older to get these things done. And that's not completely true.
Yeah, not
if
at all.
You start building wealth, you start building properties, you start building an estate, it's a good opportunity for you to sit down with an estate planning attorney, a CPA, and saying, hey, in the event of something happening, what can we do? So it's not until you're 60 years old should you start doing it. No, it should be
as soon as you have something to hand over.
As soon as you have something to hand over, as soon as you have something tangible, say like, hey, this is something that I want to make sure my heirs don't have to worry about, or one less thing to worry about. It's basically, it's already set up for them, and they know exactly what's going to happen. So.
Yeah, and I think to kind of put the point across that we've been trying to say, where it's like you should not allow yourself not to have some kind of will or living trust in place, and you should use a title company. Those are two of the biggest points we've talked about today. Mm-hmm. And I could tell you a story I ran into recently, a transaction that we're still working out, and how it kind of came into play, right? So we have a client that wants to sell a piece of property, and we had a buyer ready to go for them. And when it came down to looking into everything, it ends up that they had done 2 quick claim deeds previously, which means they didn't go through title. They literally just did a quick claim deed. You can look up what a quick claim deed is, but ultimately there's not very much protection with that quick claim deed. There's no guarantee that title's clear. So it's really just like it used to happen back in the day. Hey, I got this property. You want it? Yeah, I'll take it. How much? And it's an agreement between those two people, but there was never anything done to make sure that it was clear. See, I think that was the alarm for story time, which I got ahead of.
Hey, there we go.
So I'll try to give the points really quickly, as we couldn't close on it, right? I became an investigator myself to try to go back and figure out maybe some of this lineage of what happened. And our client got it from one of their parents, and that parent never did a will. They never did, a living trust. So now this person has it, but we don't know if they can rightfully sell it, because when it comes to like, oh, well, everyone in the family knows that that's who they gave it to. That doesn't matter. At least in Texas, that doesn't matter. We need to find clear line of paperwork where all these people handed it over and it ends up with this person. So now what we're running into is the person that sold it to their parent is gone. They've passed away. I think they were almost 100 years old. The person that sold it to that person is now gone. It's because there was 2 quit claim deeds. So that was 2 wrong transactions, or normal back then, that were not done through title. So there's literally nothing proving it. So at this point, what needs to happen is affidavit of heirship, which we could talk about, but I think we might have to save that for next time.
That's another, that is another, that is another topic that we can talk about. But, again, what we wanted to make sure is that, be prepared, be proactive when it comes down to it, whether it's your personal assets or your family's assets that you want to protect. What we talk about is talk to a title company, always go through a title company, talk to an estate planning attorney, and talk to a CPA. And so those are the things that you want to watch out for. Yeah. And if you are someone who's buying a property, if you're an investor and you want to cross those things, then you want the seller to go through the process as well. Yeah. Because you're investing a lot of money in researching the property, in getting it, having the funds lined up and ready to renovate the property, take ownership. And it could cost you a lot of money just to sit there and be bogged down when you can be proactive and take care of those steps for the seller.
Ahead of time. Yeah, that's what I would say. If you like this episode and you didn't get a full answer to maybe something we spoke about, I didn't even finish my story because that'll probably happen next time, or I don't have a conclusion yet. There's still stuff going on.
So it's to be continued.
It's in the court system right now, because there's certain ways you could clear title when everyone that might have had claim to it is passed away. That's kind of the case. Or they never had kids, they never had brothers, or their brothers, sisters are all gone too. So there's no way to really get a hold of someone that can affirm that all this happened. So they have to do publications, like in the newspapers, to anyone that might have a claim to it. And at the end of all that, if they show the judge, hey, we tried everything we could try to make sure somebody that had a claim to it knew about it, and we got nowhere, then the judge can be like, okay, you've done your due diligence. Title is reset right now. And that's a different court process.
And now you have a new deed. It's no longer called a quick claim deed. And so I think the point in that story is that it can get fixed, but not without time and money. And headaches, because all those things, and headaches, and there's all those things that you mentioned, it's not a quick process. It's not like one day to the next and all that. It is.
I think we're almost 6 months in now.
6 months in. So can it get fixed? Yes. It's going to cost you time, money, headaches. So be proactive. Talk to the right individuals. Again, comment below with which one of those questions that you have. If you need resources, Caesar and I have plenty of resources to provide. So
that's it, folks. All right, we're done. We'll see you guys next time. All right. And thanks for joining us on Coffee and Real Estate.
All right, guys. By the way, this is coffee.
Mine too, and my favorite.